Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by BeetElite. I was introduced to BeetElite by Amelia Boone ahead of the Spartan World Championships in Tahoe in 2017 due to the benefit of beets when at altitude. I had been looking for a beet product that had a good taste and have loved BeetElite's powder mix ever since. Beets can enhance muscle efficiency by reducing the oxygen cost of exercise, essentially making it easier to work harder. Talk about being efficient. They've even done a clinical trial on their product with interval training in cyclists and found an 18% increase in potential duration. Try BeetElite yourself to experience the benefits of beet-powered performance. Take 20% off all BeetElite products at humann.com/BeetElite. That's human with an extra n.com/BeetElite with the code FTLR. Welcome back. Today I have Lindsay Webster joining me on the podcast. Lindsay, thanks for taking some time to chat.
Hi, of course. My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
For sure. So first question, who is Lindsay?
Who is Lindsay? Me. I don't know. How do I sum that up? Like, I am a lover of running and my Malamute and generally all animals. I like farming and I love baking. I don't know. How else do I sum up me? Yes. My favorite current song is by Mumford & Sons. I don't know. There you go.
Cool. And you are an obstacle course racer and ultra runner, distance runner. And the first time we met was out in Tahoe. You had done pretty well at Broken Arrow, if I remember correctly. Was that the first time we'd met? Maybe it was the second. Yeah,
I think Ryan had met you for sure.
Yes,
he was
I think.
Oh, you know who that was, right?
I think both times. Both times were probably in Tahoe. The first time was probably the 2017 Spartan World Championship, and then back in that beautiful place again a couple years later.
Right. Oh, okay. Yes, this makes sense. I love it there.
For sure. So. Before we dive too far into it, you are driving somewhere in your van, and van life is very interesting to me. I think it's a fascinatingly interesting way to see the world and not have to worry about hotels and all that fun stuff. Where are you in transit to or from?
I am headed up to the Charlevoix region of Quebec, which is sort of like a little bit northeastern Quebec. So Ryan and I moved this year to a region of Quebec in the eastern townships, which is essentially like we're like 8 kilometers from the Vermont border. So it's basically like Canada's Vermont, except we speak French. But then I really have just been waiting basically for everything to open up again so that I could sort of like explore more of this province. We've been all over Canada, but like Quebec, especially northern Quebec, is like one of the places in Canada that I haven't explored yet much in my life. So yeah, Ryan's he went on a bike trip and I was kind of like, what am I going to do with myself all week? I don't want to just like hang it at home alone. So I thought I'd take the van and explore.
Cool. And so you mentioned Ryan. Ryan is your husband who is also a professional ultra runner and obstacle course racer. And people were curious, what is the dynamic between two partners who both compete at the level at which you compete at? And what is that like?
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I actually wonder a lot about how the dynamic works between couples who aren't both athletes. I honestly think it would be harder because Ryan and I mean, we have a lot of the same races. We have the same lifestyle. We're able to do all this really cool traveling together. But if only one of us had this as our career, this year's been different, obviously, with COVID and everything. But like other years, I feel like I would be away from home so much. And the other thing about being an athlete is that it's all about like, yeah, your food, your sleep, blah, blah, blah. Like it can be selfish at times. And when you're both living that lifestyle, you just do it together and it's really fun. But if it's just one person, I feel like it would be a lot more difficult. So I feel really lucky. He feels really lucky. And we've got to experience all sorts of cool places together because of it. And in terms of like motivating each other, which I'm sure is what people want to know too. Yeah, like I think he's my sounding board a lot of the time. He's pretty self-motivated and he doesn't need like a sounding board really. But for me, it's if I'm nervous going into a race, then like he's really good at talking me through it and giving me tips on like the course and where I can use my strengths to my advantages and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm lucky. We don't train together a lot actually. And not as much as people think we do because he's faster. So it makes it hard. Yeah.
Cool. How did you get into distance running and we'll start there.
From Ryan actually. So when I met Ryan, my long run was about an hour long and he had been introduced to it years earlier from a friend of his who got him into sort of more ultra distances and stuff. And anyway, so I sort of just gradually ramped it up like year after year. It was a really slow build, which I'm glad I did. He would just take me on all these adventures and I would like push my limits. And for example, like our first date was on this trail that we hiked over 3 days. And I remember we did about 8 hours of hiking per day to complete this trail, which to me at the time was like, I remember my feet being so sore at the end of every day. But then this year I actually ran it all in one go for the first time and set the FKT on it. So, but that's like how long it's been 7 years since him and I think started dating. So yeah, really long, slow build, but yeah.
When did you realize that you were pretty good at it?
I don't know. Like I've always known that I had a good engine to be an athlete. By various other sports that I've done, but never like long distance stuff. I actually don't know that I'm like much of an ultra runner. Like my body, I mean, I'm able to do more for sure than I used to, but after like, I think it used to be about 12 hours and now I'm sure it's probably about 15 or maybe 20, but I'm not really able to like run anymore after that point in time where like, some people can just go for days and days.
12 hours is pretty hardy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like ultra distance running, but then you have people like Courtney DeWalter who just tried to do the Colorado Trail and she was out for how many days was it before she had to call it quits?
It was like 6 days or something.
Yeah. And I don't know. And Ryan's able to do stuff like that too. Like some people's bodies are just able to handle so much, but for me, that would be so out of my wheelhouse.
So you are a professional obstacle course racer. So how did you get into that?
From Ryan. This is going to be my answer to every single question, it seems. Yeah, I don't know. He's introduced me to a lot of things in life. Like before I did obstacle racing, I worked in marketing at actually like mud run events and stuff. And I really loved my job. And it's being a professional athlete is like something that I never would have considered for myself. Actually, my sister growing up was a professional athlete. She went to the Olympics twice for cross country skiing. So like I knew what it took. And I sort of made the decision, like either I could pursue cross country skiing with her or I could be a normal kid and like go to university and get a degree. And I decided to do that. So like, I just never really pictured myself being a professional athlete. And then it sort of just like fell into my lap a bit later in life once I was a little bit more older and driven and focused. Got my partying behind me.
What was that transition like?
Scary, because like I think a lot of people who become professional athletes do it straight out of high school and they just sort of like go through this system of, I don't know, like the road to being a pro athlete outside of high school and stuff. Like there's all these steps that you follow via scholarships and stuff. But for me, it was like I went from working a full-time job and having a regular salary to like leaving my job and deciding to live off prize money. So, so it was like a scary leap, but then I built a bit of a race resume already. And so after my first year of racing, I was able to like find some sponsors, and it just sort of snowballed from there. So yeah, I'm pretty lucky. Like there's not a day that goes by that I don't recognize that.
Definitely is gratitude something that you practice intentionally?
No, I wouldn't say intentionally. Like I know people have gratitude journals and everything, and they write down, 3 things or whatever every day that they're grateful for. But I think I'm pretty good at just recognizing those things in my daily life. Like I don't know. I never want to like be that person who rushes through things without recognizing like the joy in it that it brings me, I guess. So yeah, so I've just never had to like keep a journal or anything. It's just sort of, I don't know, come more naturally to me, I guess. I mean, I do work on it for sure. Like if I'm stressed or something and I'm in the middle of, I don't know, taking care of the vegetable garden, to me, it's like something that I recognize that I never want it to be a chore. Like I'm doing it. Yes, it puts food on the table, but I'm doing it because I love it. So, yeah.
Cool. And in this age, so you mentioned that, you took that leap to live off of prize money. In this age where there isn't really any prize money, how are you handling that? And what's been the focus of 2020 for you?
Yeah, focus of 2020, I think I don't know, it was hard. Everybody knows that like races, it started out that we all thought they'd sort of be up and running again come June, and then it was July, and then that was canceled, and then the whole series was like re-announced and rescheduled only to be canceled again. So the whole year has sort of just been like refocusing. But from the get-go, I had in mind that I wanted to do some FKTs and stuff this year. And like, I was like, oh, this is other years we do so much racing and traveling for racing that there's been a lot of things that I've wanted to do and missed, like just camping trips or certain FKT routes and stuff that I haven't been able to do the last several years because we just haven't had time for it. So this year I was like, oh, I'm going to do all those things. So as much as it's been sometimes hard to like find a focus, I guess, without, racing and your competitors to think about and stuff, like it's just you against yourself. But I think I've been pretty good at re-goal setting. And then you were asking about like prize money and stuff. We're pretty lucky that about 50% of our income actually comes from sponsors. And our sponsors, like most of them we've been working with for multiple years now. So yeah, so it was a bit scary because Ryan and I just like bought a new house. And then all the races were canceled and stuff. But lucky for us, like we had some money saved, and then we do have our sponsors who like are really supportive of us. So I don't know, like if this goes on for several more years, like if they would then drop us and it becomes less feasible. But for now, we're pretty lucky that like we're still managing just fine.
And what's been the relationship with the sponsors? I think many people who tune into this podcast have shared that they appreciate sort of the behind the scenes understanding of how professional athletics works. And so many people, don't know how those relationships work. So how did you link up with your first sponsor? Let's start there.
So my first sponsor actually is my longest sponsor, which is Human. Other people probably know them as BeetElite. So Human is the parent company of BeetElite. And they actually make a lot of products for sort of heart health patients. Like you would see them in the health section of pharmacies and stuff. Like it's like sort of more of I wouldn't say pharmaceutical company because it's all just like natural products, but yeah, but it's not just BeetElite as, the athletes in our sport would know it. But they actually approached me, which has been the way of things with actually all my sponsors. I find that I don't know, like everybody says that you need connections in life to get anywhere, right? And as much as I hate to admit that that's like true, I've never had any luck reaching out to a company and just sending them a race resume. It's all people who have contacted me or who I've met at races. But I think if you're looking to find sponsors for yourself, I would say like the first step is to build yourself a race resume, like register for races, and not just any races. Like you have to go to the competitive ones, like the US National Series and things like that. Sort of build up your resume and then try and meet people at races. Like the people who are interested in sponsoring athletes in our sport are going to be the ones who are like the companies who are coming to races and setting up tents. And like, so just go around after, and I would say talk to people and meet some people, and you'll probably see them at a couple different races. And like, that's how we met Darn Tough, actually, the sock company, which I wouldn't say that they're like a sponsor of ours, but they send us socks sometimes, and they're the best socks ever. And we love them. And we just sort of met them through like various different races and stuff. So, and now I would consider them friends. So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool how that works. So I've been in the running industry for I guess 7 years now as well, and like everything happened. That's how everything happens. Like some of my best conversations were over beers after the expo, after the Boston Marathon, or like we got barbecue with people in Texas, and it's just like.
Those both sound amazing.
Yes,
beer
and that's why beer and barbecue.
You can hang out after a race anytime.
Definitely. So, but I think that's what I love about the industry. It's not a bunch of people sitting in offices making decisions. It's there is that does happen, but I think that all of the interesting stuff happens on the ground and, at the races and in restaurants and at bars. And that's a part I miss pretty tremendously right about now.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool community. And as much as, some of these companies, definitely have big corporations. Like, I don't know, I think people forget a lot of the time to like see past the corporate head and actually just see the people within. Like, you need to meet and talk with the people.
For sure. So you mentioned FKTs. In all of the places you get to go, I'm sure there are plenty of routes available. How have you been deciding or choosing what you want to focus on?
Most of them I've actually had in mind for several years, but a lot of the ones that I want to do either still aren't accessible because of this pandemic or are only just becoming accessible. So like there's not actually a whole lot around Quebec and Ontario where we live. But there's a couple in Western Canada that I want to do. The problem was that until recently, like the province borders were closed. So like Quebec just sort of more recently opened up. So we'll try and find a time to like trip out west now. But a lot of the other ones that I want to do, like the rim to rim of the Grand Canyon, or there's a couple in Colorado, like we still can't cross the border into the US. Right. So I really want to run the presidential traverse, but obviously that's still off limits. So as much as it's like the year of the FKTs, it's sort of like, okay.
Gotta get there, yeah.
Canadian FKTs, yeah. A lot of the ones in Canada are actually like massively long. Like people, I think with the US, it's broken up into so many states, right? But provinces in Canada are huge. And a lot of the trails, the really cool trails that we have here are like the whole province wide or long. So like the Bruce Trail is, I forget how many kilometers, but it basically is like a good chunk of Ontario, and Ontario is the biggest province. So yeah.
Well, you just named a couple that I've either done, not as an FKT, but just run or thought about running. The Presidential Traverse is just a couple hours north of me, and it's been a popular one for my friends to do this summer, and it looks gnarly, like classic New England trails. What is it about that? And then the Grand Canyon, I guess, would be a little bit further, but that's in that it's less than 10 hours, call it.
Yeah.
What is it about that duration that you like?
For me, the duration is like it's challenging but feasible. So the one that I just did recently in Ontario was 12 hours long, which was like really scary for me to go and do because, yeah, that's the really long run for me. The presidential traverse, I think, would take me somewhere around 5 hours if I had a really good day. So, yeah, so that's like, I don't know. I like stuff within that distance realm. Like my favorite Spartan distance would probably be like a beast course. So anything really between, I would say like, I don't know, 3 and 8 hours is like my happy place. Anything longer than that's pretty uncomfortable. Anything shorter than 10K is a sprint for me. So you said you did the presidential traverse. How was your weather?
So I didn't do the presidential traverse. It's been something I've been thinking about, but I did do the Grand Canyon, and the weather was perfect. We did it.
What time of year did you do it?
We did it last fall. It was in October, the third weekend of October. And we started at 5 a.m. and it was probably 50 degrees and it didn't get much. I wore like a tank top with a light jacket over it. And like within 3 minutes, I was down to the tank top for the rest of the day. And the belly of the canyon was, I don't know, maybe 65 degrees tops. Yeah. And the north side was probably 55 again. So I'd say we did it at the best time of year. I had a friend that did it last week, and she said she saw 125 degrees. So
yeah, I would not.
Not the time. What is it? Yeah. What is it about something like that that's just like wildly different? Like, right? Like I can't train for that in New England. There are no, and I'm sure it's probably similar in Quebec. Like there are no 5-mile downhills that you can, do hill reps on. So what is it about something that's like so out of your wheelhouse that sounds that like interesting like that?
For me, it's really just like, the views and stuff, I guess. Like it's all the cool places that I would be able to see on the way. And it's just the prospect of the Grand Canyon. Like I've been there a couple times. We hiked, not the whole rim to rim, but we did a big section of it once with a friend of ours. We backpacked it. He got bit by a scorpion. He was really sick, but fine. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for me, I think the appeal of the trails that I choose. It's like the views. For the presidential traverse, it would be because it's similar to the Adirondacks. And Ryan and I have a cabin there. So like, and then also it's just like a really competitive route. Like that has to be one of the most competitive times in, I'd say like Eastern, I don't know, both Americas probably.
So the amount of time that it took me to run south to north was the women's FKT. It's like a 20-minute difference. I was like, oh my God, how do you go twice as fast?
Apparently she like practiced a whole bunch and trained specifically for it. And like she'd run the trail a whole bunch of times. So she knew the whole route and everything.
That definitely helps. And then you are, as we talked about, you're a Spartan athlete as well. How did that relationship come about? And you've been on their pro team for a while now, right?
Yeah, I really love being on their pro team, actually. It took some years to come about because do you remember Battle Frog?
Yeah.
Battle Frog. I loved them. So we were partnered with them for a while. And then when they went under, like Tough Mudder and Spartan both reached out to us, but we chose to partner with Tough Mudder because we just felt like their brand was more similar to Battle Frog. Obstacles were more similar. Like it was more about camaraderie and stuff than like being the fastest or anything. And anyway, and then eventually we ended up partnering with Spartans. So yes, we've been around the block, but
And how's the community been?
amazing. Yeah. Community is amazing. Like I love, I don't, it's like such a family. It's really cool being on the actual pro team. Cause for so many years, like we would be at the races, but we weren't actually on the pro team. And you would see like the pro team members being called off to do this and that, like various different things for Spartan. But to actually like kind of be part of that family and be part of it, I was like, oh, I feel like I've been missing out for years. Yeah.
So do you want to explain sort of how that works so I think a lot of the people listening to this podcast, or at least the people who listen regularly, are familiar with trail running, and I'm sure your audience is much more familiar with Spartan and how the pro team works. But for those who don't know, do you want to explain the race series and sort of how the season works?
Yeah, sorry, I'm used to like obstacle racing podcasts. So, how do I sum this all up? You can help me if you. I'm kind of one of those people that's like bad at finding words for things. But so Spartan Race as a company has, yes, like age group races and everything, but then they also have like they have competitive elite waves, and not every single race. I'd say every race I think has elite waves, but some of them are way more competitive than others. Spartan has certain races that they've turned into these like national series. So Canada has a national series. The US has a national series, which consists of like 5 different races over the race season. And then you rack up points. And whoever has, I think it's like the least amount of points, ends up winning the series, for which there's like prize money. But then there's also prize money at each of the races, which at these competitive ones is like fairly hefty. Spartan does a really good job at getting fast athletes, so kudos to them for that.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating the discrepancy between the top trail runners and the top Spartan athletes in terms of the prize money and your yearly take home earnings just from winning or podiuming is massive compared to trail running, and I think that a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, so at Spartan World Championships last year, the top prize for each male and female was 20 grand US. So yeah, like wrap your head around that. I don't know.
That's a good chunk. Yeah.
Yeah. So like if there's any trail runners listening who want to come and compete, like we definitely are always looking for more fast athletes, especially in the women's field. Like we would love to have more ladies out. Our field's getting it's like definitely getting more stacked now than it was when I started obstacle racing, I think 5 years ago, but there's room for growth. So
what does training look like for you? How do you mix in endurance and strength?
Yeah, like I've always had pretty good upper body strength. Like in high school, I did cross country skiing and rowing. So I'm kind of built like a runner, but then I've also I don't know if it's because I did sports that involved upper body work when I was younger, or it's like just sort of come naturally to me, but like I was always able to do at least one chin up. And so when I started obstacle racing, I did have to work on grip strength a lot more so that I could get through the obstacles. Like when I started, that for sure was my weakness. The running was always like came more easily to me. Mm-hmm. So I would say that now I probably do strength training, which is full body, including grip strength work, like hangboarding, chin-ups. I go to the bouldering gym, stuff like that. I'll do it 3 days a week. And I find that if I don't, then I have trouble getting through the obstacles. But like my husband, Ryan, who's very naturally gifted in the grip strength realm, he like never does strength training. He literally only just does cardio because he has no trouble. So yeah, so I think it just depends on the person. But yeah.
Cool. Thanks again to BeetElite for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. I have dialed in a combination of sports nutrition products that works very well for me, and BeetElite has been a part of that for the last 3 years, particularly ahead of workouts, long runs, and whenever I'm headed to altitude. Don't just take my word for it. There's plenty of science on the performance benefits of Beets. Normally, it's hard to get these benefits in an enjoyable and convenient way, but BeetElite has figured that part out too. Try it for yourself and take 20% off BeetElite products with the code FTLR on their website, which is human with 2Ns.com/BeetElite. I'll also link to it in the show notes. How is the balance between, I know I don't want to say dabbled in trail running. You won a race, a very competitive race recently. So I think it would be a disservice to say it that way, but it definitely skews more towards obstacle course racing. But is there a desire to mix it up more, or are you focused more on one versus the other?
Definitely. I mean, I've like fallen in love with sky running, and I really love technical trail running, which I would love to do more of. The thing that makes it challenging is with obstacle racing, because everything's, like I was talking about the series, everything's part of a series. And so if you miss a race, you got to
do them all.
Points. And like you have to do them all, which doesn't leave a lot of time for additional races, or like you don't want to get burnt out because the obstacle racing schedule ends up being pretty full as it is. So, but I definitely would love to do more like sky races and trail races. And I was supposed to do the whole Skyrunner World Series over in Europe this year, but obviously that was canceled. But hopefully next year.
Cool. Let's say you fast forward 10 years from today. Mm-hmm. What are you really proud of?
Like 10 years from now, what am I going to be proud of? I don't know. Hopefully my kids, which I don't have yet, but that's tough. What am I proud of? I think just like, I guess taking chances in life to do things that make me happy. Mm-hmm. Like I very nearly like fell into the whole realm of working in a whole corporate environment. I've realized since that I am just not cut out for a desk job. Like I can't sit still, and I don't know how I managed to have a desk job for 5 years of my life before I became an athlete. Taking that leap to like become an athlete and have a lifestyle that was like way more suited to me and I'm way happier, and obviously it was scary, but like no regrets there. And then after I'm done being an athlete, I'd really like to open my own cafe or bakery, which obviously is also an area where there's like a high failure rate. But I'm determined to try. So hopefully it'll be successful and I'll be proud of that. But if it's not successful, then I'll be proud of trying.
Cool. The reason I like to ask this question is this podcast is designed to sort of explore what has allowed people to be successful and focused primarily on top and elite professional athletes or professionals in their own field. And so there tend to be there tend to be some things that pop up over and over and over again in terms of like what has allowed somebody to reach the point that they're at now. And mm-hmm. taking risks is almost always included in that. Mm-hmm. And I think that you don't want to just be taking risks all the time, but these calculated, or like you said, you just want to be happy and do things that make you happy. You can take risks to be more happy. And I think that, so my coach uses a phrase, shoot your shot. And it just means like, just do it and try it and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And so that's what you did. And that's what you might do in the future with a cafe or a bakery or whatnot. But if you don't shoot that shot, you don't find out, and you can't be successful if you don't try. So thanks for highlighting that. And it's interesting to hear that come up over and over again.
That would be a really interesting expression to actually remember, like on a start line when you're really nervous before a race, because that saying also applies pretty much to like every single race. So yeah. So at some point in the race, you're going to have to take a risk, right?
Exactly. What are you thinking about at the start line?
Usually my go-to sayings are just, I guess it would be just to do my best that I have in me on that day. Like my job is not to be there to win. My job is to be there to like just do my best. And maybe on that day, my best will be, I don't know, maybe I'll have a bad day. Maybe something will go wrong. But I will have adversity and I'll try and battle through it and I'll just do my best. And that always brings me a little bit of comfort. Yeah.
Cool. What are you scared of?
In life in general or during races?
However you want to interpret that.
I don't know. I'm scared when Ryan goes away that somebody will break in my house at night. What else am I afraid? During races, obviously, especially obstacle races, there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
What's your least favorite type of obstacle?
Inconsistent ones. Spartan Race has one that is called the spear throw, which is exactly how it sounds. You throw a spear into a bale of hay. And I mean, I didn't grow up playing ball sports. So my throwing arm isn't great. I'd say my aim is pretty good, but it's not to me any sort of test of physical ability.
Yeah.
It's just your luck on any given day. And I know people who are have a good throwing arm and really good aim, and they still sometimes miss. Sometimes the hay bale is really hard packed and the spear hits and then it just bounces right back out. And it's, yeah, those are the ones that I hate the most because it's just really and it can really if you miss it, then you have to do a penalty, which can cost you the race. And it's part of the sport, it's part of the race, but it's cost a lot of people a lot of races at the same time. So I would say that's my least favorite type of obstacle. Ones that are inconsistent. Yes.
How do you feel about balance?
I think having balance in life. What do you mean, balance obstacles or balance in life?
No, balance in life.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think it's part of the key to happiness, really. Yes, there's always going to be things in life that you don't want to do, that you have to do. There's going to be balance within relationships. One person, especially when it comes to having kids, is usually going to end up doing more than the other. But I think to just have a good balance where you're appreciating moments and finding time for yourself and things that make you happy, as well as the things that you don't want to do, is the real key to happiness. I think that if you could just do things that you only wanted to do all the time, it would lose a lot of its luster and you probably just wouldn't end up being as happy.
I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say. You go first.
Well, I was going to say, I think the highs or the lows make the highs. And so like you said, if you're winning all the time, or if things are perfect all the time, it loses that luster, as you said.
Yeah. And this year with races being canceled, I don't know, everybody struggles with something in their job. No job is ever going to be perfect. And if I could choose a dream job, it would be being a full-time athlete. But the thing that I struggle with the most is traveling. I'm a bit of a homebody, I guess. I love being home. I love my friends. I love
Is that why you have a van?
Time in my veggie garden. Yeah, it's moving home, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there have been other years where especially towards the end of the season, I was just oh my gosh, I'm burnt out. I'm sick of doing this. I don't want to do this race. But then this year with them being canceled, I really miss it. And I feel I'm really enjoying this year still, don't get me wrong. And obviously I'm off my own adventure right now, but I miss my race friends. I miss those start line nerves. There's so many things about it that I used to just especially the start line nerves. I would be I hate that. But yeah. I find that I'm really missing them.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. Personally, it's a great time to have a podcast that's designed to explore the why, because I think everybody is needing to do that, particularly professional athletes, but also amateurs who can't train for a race. And virtual racing is definitely not the same type of competition.
Right.
So I think that this sort of I don't want to call it like pulling back, but lack of racing or something fresh and different
Mm-hmm.
renews the love that we have for it. Like I've put in a training block since March, and it's just been like week after week after week and consistent training in a way that like I've never had before. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that like the best way to love training is to do it consistently. And there are so many people that are in the cycle of train race, train race, train race, and
Mm-hmm.
never get to like build that like base that allows them to like hit flow. Like I
Yeah,
lived that feeling, and it's
such a good
happened like
point.
yeah, it's like happened 4 times this year. And you blink and 16 miles have gone
Flow
by, and
state.
it's like,
That happened to me
yeah,
today.
isn't that the best?
Yeah, it's
How,
fantastic. No, and I think
well,
also like training not to race, but training because you love to do it, because you love running or biking or whatever. Like I think a lot of people have realized that this year.
definitely. Tell me about that run today.
I ran, well, I had like a 6 hour drive to do today, and there's this trail that is about halfway. So it was just like a nice way to break it up. But yeah, it's a trail that has like 3 different summits on it. So you kind of do like one big climb, and then you summit, and then you sort of do this, what would we call it? In French, it's called the boucle, a buckle, basically,
Mhm.
along like a ridge down and up to another mountain, and then a bit of a descent, and then you like boot up to a third mountain, and then you like run all the way down. It was only 16 kilometers, but I thought that it was going to take me 2.5 hours because it was like really technical terrain. But yeah, I found the flow state, and I was done
That's
in
awesome.
2:07. So yay.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is hardy for that distance.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the
Cool.
technical terrain, so I was a happy camper. Literally,
Awesome.
I'm camping.
True. I went to a wedding up in Vermont last summer or 2 summers ago, and I remember having 14 miles on the schedule, and I ran the first 7 in like 2.5 hours. I was like,
Wow.
I can't afford another 2.5 hours to hit this mileage. The trails out there are just so gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a lot of people say that when they stay at our cabin in the Adirondacks. They're just like, oh, we planned like this, a 7 mile run, and it took us like all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you wish people knew about you?
Uh, hmm. I don't know. Like, that's hard actually for people who don't know me. I'm used to like, I guess, like I said, doing obstacle racing podcasts. So I'll like throw in a fact that they would find interesting or sort of already know about me. But for people who don't know me at all, like, I have no idea. When I open my cafe, come eat my cookies. Tell me which one is your favorite. I don't know. The one good thing about this pandemic is I've been like on a mission to just nail down all my recipes. So I have discovered what I think is the world's best chocolate chip cookie recipe and the world's best brownie recipe. So there you go. So that's maybe what I want people to know about me, is that I have the world's best brownie recipe. And when I open my cafe, you're going to have to come try it.
Deal. Do you have a name for it?
No, not yet. I thought about naming them after like all different mountains. So like in New Zealand, there's a Mount Cook. And so I might just like name my world's best cookie Mount Cooks.
Nice.
Yeah. It's kind of a stupid pun, but
no, I love it. I'm all about the puns. Puns are always intended.
Yeah, puns.
Last question. How do you feel about social media? And I asked that sort of within the lens of being a professional athlete. It's probably a part of your job. It's in the contracts. It's how do you feel with how do you feel with it?
I actually come from like a photography background, so it was interesting becoming a pro athlete because you have to post. I guess like if my Instagram feed was just all my own, it would just be pretty pictures of mountains and views and things. But there has to be like a certain amount of athletic related things that I post. So I think I love it less than I would if it was just all mine. But I'm lucky enough to have structured my contracts with sponsors in such a way that, like there's not actually a lot of social media involved, because I like to keep it personal. And I don't know how I managed to do that. Honestly, it was like a lot easier 4 years ago, but it's becoming harder and harder because it's such a big part of sponsorship nowadays. Like it's not just about the athlete; it's about like also how many followers people have and yada yada. Which I don't love that.
Do you feel like
athletes should be athletes, not influencers?
Yeah.
Kind of. But sorry, what were you going to say? Do I feel like?
Do you feel like there's I don't want to say like comparison game, or there's like a do you find yourself comparing?
Yeah, well, I follow all my obviously competitors on social media, which actually I find really motivates me in my training. Like if I see that they're like training really hard and whatever, I don't know, like there's so many different ways that I pull motivation from it. But actually before big races, I'll stop going on, or I'll like unfollow all of them for a month. I think it's such an important time to just focus on you and what you're doing. And I've made the mistake before of being like, oh, you know, what's she done today for training? Oh, I didn't do that. So I have to like, you know, make up for it or something like that because she did more. Like I've fallen into that trap and it never works.
Yeah.
It's always so much better just to focus on yourself and like what you have to do. And I'm always a lot more like focused coming to the start line and way less nervous if I haven't been like stalking social media.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with it, but it's actually been interesting with this virus this year because with sponsors, like usually, you know, you wear their gear to races and you perform well and stuff. And like, that's how I've structured my contracts. And but this year I've been trying to, they haven't told me to do necessarily any more social media or anything, but I'm trying to do a lot more things for them and reach out and like see how I can be helpful and still like pull my weight now that we don't have races. So yeah.
Right.
So it's been kind of fun actually.
Sense.
I've enjoyed it actually.
Yeah, it's a new puzzle. Okay, so I'll add one more question. You referenced motivation and like finding your own sources of motivation. Where does your motivation come from?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, for me, it's I think like all the cool places that I can get to just by feet or maybe bike that I wouldn't have been able to reach if I wasn't this fit. Like there's so many places that I've been to and seen that like you couldn't drive to or even bike to, a lot of them that like, yeah, I don't know, when I met Ryan and my long run was an hour, like if there's no way I could have got to them, but like after years of building my fitness and there's just so many cool, incredible things that I've like encountered. And yeah, I think that's where most of my motivation comes from.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. Like so when I did the rim to rim to rim, I had that conscious thought on the north side. I was like, because you can see the south side, and on the south side you can see the north side, and it's like, oh my God, I came from there. There's no other way to get there except by foot, or you can
and like how few people could do that, you know?
Right, or you could pay $500 to take a mule ride, but I think you'd have to pay me about $10,000 to take that ride.
Yeah.
But
and it's so much more like, oh, you just feel so accomplished. And granted, like every time you do a day that big, there are miserable moments. Like you're always going to hit the black hole of pain. Yes. But like I think when you finish and you've accomplished it and you look back on it, like it's just such a cool experience. And I bet anybody who's ridden the mules was like, oh yeah, it was beautiful, but they won't remember it nearly as like you're never going to forget that. So yeah. Totally.
Awesome. Well, if we want to follow along with your adventures, where can we find you on social media?
I really only have Instagram because I stopped using Facebook and Twitter like I literally deleted them. It's just like, this is too much to keep up with. There's too many social media streams now. But on Instagram, I'm Lindsay Webster, and Lindsay is spelled with an AY.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, thanks so much for coming on to chat today, and hopefully see you on a mountain or trail or Spartan race or maybe the presidential traverse at some point soon.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to finish the rest of my drive listening to more of your podcasts from other cool athletes.
Thanks so much, and enjoy.
Yeah.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.